Chapter 12. Heraldic Falsehood. How coats of arms betray the illegitimacy of the European monarchies. The majority of people believe a coat of arms to be something more than a mere picture. In the classical European tradition, a coat of arms was a juridical document, hewn in stone and color. It certified origin, entrenched rights, and bore witness to dynastic continuity. A knight who rode into a tournament bearing another's arms risked not only his reputation, but his life. He could be summoned to a duel of honor and slain as an impostor. A monarch whose arms contained an inaccuracy risked war, for a coat of arms was no ornament, but a declaration of sovereignty. It is precisely for this reason that heraldry constitutes an ideal mirror of legitimacy. If a dynasty is lawful, its arms grow organically from history, from blood, from the soil. If a dynasty is usurped, its arms are invariably a forgery, a theft, a political collage, or an outright counterfeit. And when we apply heraldic expertise to the present European monarchies, the result proves to be every bit as devastating as the juridical analysis. Not a single one of the reigning dynasties of Europe possesses an authentic, continuous, juridically irreproachable coat of arms. Everywhere, either theft or fabrication or a hasty redrawing after the fact. And this is no coincidence. It is a system. Monarchies that have no right to the throne cannot possess honest coats of arms either. 12.1. Spain, a dumping ground of imperial phantoms. The Spanish royal coat of arms is perhaps the most vivid example of heraldic madness in Europe. If you have ever examined it attentively, you may have experienced a slight vertigo. 4 quarters of the main shield. Within each quarter, further arms. Around the shield, the collar of the Order of the Golden Fleece. Above, a crown. Below, a motto. And all of it riots with lions, castles, palettes, chains, pomegranates, and other heraldic tinsel. What, then, does this magnificence signify? It signifies the following. The Spanish Bourbons, having usurped the throne in 1700 by the testament of the childless degenerate Charles II, and having been restored by the dictator Franco in 1975, have appropriated to themselves the arms of practically every state with which their predecessors or distant relatives ever had dealings. It matters not that Spain never controlled the majority of these territories or lost them centuries ago. It matters not that the dynastic rights to them expired long since or never existed at all. What matters is only that these arms look handsome and create the illusion of a great empire. Here is merely a brief inventory of the phantoms inhabiting the Spanish arms. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, a crusader state that fell in 1291, 2 centuries before the discovery of America and 4 centuries before the accession of the Bourbons in Spain. Upon what grounds does the Spanish king bear the arms of Jerusalem? Upon the grounds of dynastic claims going back to the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon to Isabella of Castile, who, in their turn, inherited the title Kings of Jerusalem from the Angevin branch. The Angevins received this title through marriage with an heiress of the Jerusalem throne in the 13th century, yet never controlled the Holy Land itself. This is not even a right to a throne. It is a heraldic corpse, which the Spanish monarchs have dragged behind them for 7 centuries, in order to create the illusion of a universal monarchy. Navarre, an independent kingdom in the Pyrenees, annexed by Spain in 1512. The annexation was an act of naked aggression. Ferdinand of Aragon invaded Navarre under the pretext of combating heresy, expelled the lawful dynasty, and annexed the territory to his dominions. The Navarrese resisted, but were crushed. Since then, the arms of Navarre, golden chains upon a red field, have adorned the Spanish shield as a symbol of lawful possession. Yet permit me, if you have killed the master of a house and seized his property, does the house become yours by right? In the criminal code, this is called robbery. In the heraldry of the Bourbons, historical patrimony. Granada, the last Muslim emirate on the Iberian Peninsula, conquered in 1492. In the Spanish arms, it is depicted in the form of a pomegranate, a play on words, Granada, pomegranate, in the base of the shield, wherein, it would seem, lies the illegitimacy. Conquest is conquest. Yet the point is that the Bourbons have no connection whatever to this conquest. Granada was conquered by the Catholic monarchs, Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, representatives of the House of Trastamara. The Bourbons, who came to power in 1700, simply stole the arms of their predecessors, as a thief steals medals from the uniform of a slain veteran. Sicily and Naples, kingdoms lost by Spain in the 18th century as a result of the War of the Spanish Succession and subsequent dynastic partitions. Sicily passed to the House of Savoy, then to the Austrian Habsburgs, then to the Neapolitan Bourbons, a cadet branch that ruled independently of Madrid. Today, Sicily is part of the Italian Republic, yet the Spanish arms still contain its symbols. Why? For the same reason an impoverished aristocrat wears a signet ring with a family crest sold for debt 100 years ago, to remember former grandeur, and so that others may remember too. Austria and Burgundy. This is a brazenness beyond all bounds. The Austrian arms, a red shield with a silver fess, and the Burgundian arms, a blue field with golden lilies and a red boyer. These are the inheritance of the Habsburgs, the dynasty that ruled Spain before the Bourbons. When the Bourbons seized the throne in 1700, they possessed no right whatever to the Habsburg heraldry. This is as if the new owner of a house were to leave the portraits of the previous owners hanging upon the wall and pass them off as his own ancestors. In any normal heraldic system, this is called theft. Yet this is not all. In 1975, following Franco's death, the arms of Spain were hastily redrawn. The Francoist eagle of St. John, introduced by the dictator in 1938 as a symbol of the new order, was removed. However, many elements remain from the previous regime. Furthermore, the current arms, approved in 1981, contain a heraldic error that even less than fastidious experts have noticed. The mantling, the cloth ornament upon the royal crown, is depicted with an alternation of colors that does not correspond to the historical original. Heralds point out that this is the result of hasty work by designers unacquainted with the rules. Imagine, a state symbol, which ought to have been approved by the finest experts, has been drawn with a technical mistake, as if a citizen's passport were printed with a coat of arms containing a grammatical error. Yet for Spain, this is the norm, because their monarchy is just as hasty an artifact as its coat of arms. The Spanish coat of arms is no symbol of continuity. It is a dumping ground of imperial claims, upon which the Bourbons have heaped everything they could steal from their predecessors and distant relatives. It is the heraldic equivalent of purchasing a counterfeit diploma. The paper is there, but the knowledge is absent. And every time King Felipe VI appears before his subjects with these arms upon his standard, he demonstrates not the greatness of Spain, but the greatness of the Spanish lie. 12.2. Great Britain, a coat of arms rewritten after the fact. If the Spaniards at least make no secret of the fact that their coat of arms is a collection of stolen trinkets, the British have taken another path. They rewrote their coat of arms retroactively, when the political situation urgently demanded that the German origin of the dynasty be forgotten. The year 1917, the fourth year of the First World War. London is convulsed by anti-German pogroms. Mobs smash shops bearing German surnames upon their signboards. German shepherds are renamed Alsatians. The Duchy of Battenberg becomes Mountbatten. And in this atmosphere of hysteria, King George V, whose full title still rings out in German and whose surname is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, resolves that it is time to change something. In 1917, at the height of the First World War, King George V not only changed the dynastic surname from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor, he also secretly altered the royal coat of arms. The German elements, the inescutcheon of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, green and black stripes with the arms of Saxony, the Hanoverian crowned helm, were simply excised. The lion and the unicorn, ancient British symbols inherited from the Stuarts, were redrawn in a more British style. And this surgically altered coat of arms was presented to the public as the primordial symbol of the British monarchy. The paradox is that the symbols themselves, the lion of England and the unicorn of Scotland, are indeed ancient and authentic. But the dynasty that employs them has no blood right to them whatever. The Windsors are not the descendants of the Plantagenets, whose lion ramps upon the shield. They are not the descendants of the Stuarts, whose unicorn is fettered with a chain. They are German interlopers who, in 1917, simply appropriated another's heraldry, passing it off as their own. This is tantamount to a nouveau riche who, having purchased at auction the family portrait of some lord or other, hangs it in his drawing room and tells his guests, "This is my ancestor." The official heraldic journal The Coat of Arms, published by the Heraldry Society, conducted an investigation into this rebranding in the 1950s. The conclusions were devastating. The changes of 1917 were carried out without due heraldic procedure, in haste, and technically violated the rules for the inheritance of heraldic elements. The College of Arms was presented with a fait accompli. The king simply commanded, and the heralds obeyed. This is not a mere change of signboard. This is heraldic forgery. A dynasty that for centuries had borne a German coat of arms became British overnight, simply by redrawing the picture. Imagine that you have discovered a document in the archives, according to which your ancestor was not an English lord, but a German burgher. And instead of acknowledging this, you simply take an eraser to the inconvenient lines and write in the ones you need. In the criminal code, this is called forgery of documents. In the British monarchy, it is called the restoration of historical justice. If a surname can be changed by royal decree and a coat of arms by a stroke of a heraldic artist's pen, then what is this entire 1,000-year tradition worth? What are the assurances of monarchists worth that the Windsors are an ancient British dynasty? What are the ceremonies worth, broadcast to the entire world, with arms and banners that were drawn in haste in 1917 in order to conceal the truth? The answer is evident. They are worth nothing. The British coat of arms is no testament of continuity. It is material evidence of forgery. And so long as these arms adorn state institutions, they remind all those capable of seeing a British dynasty does not exist. There exists a German dynasty that changed its signboard when the air began to smell of scorching. 2.2.1 The Vampire King. How Charles III stole another's charisma, but could not steal its rights. The imagination of the Windsors, however, is not confined to heraldic theft and forgery. It was not enough for them to steal the British coat of arms. Their next target became Romanian folklore and world cinema. King Charles III, that dreary descendant of German burghers, has suddenly discovered within himself a passion for Transylvania. He buys up houses there, advertises the local cheeses, and, with a mysterious air, hints at the call of the blood and the summons of his ancestors. Which ancestors? It transpires that, through Queen Mary of Teck, he is a distant descendant of Vlad III Dracula, voivode of Wallachia, who served as the prototype for Count Dracula. Stop. Do not laugh too loudly. Let us examine this claim with the same meticulousness with which we have dissected their coats of arms. Firstly, concerning the rights. According to Salic law, the very law that the European dynasties employed for centuries to exclude women from the throne, and upon which the Windsors themselves, then still the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, relied in their German possessions, the rights to a title and inheritance are transmitted exclusively through the direct male line. The connection of Charles III to Vlad Dracula passes through Mary of Teck, that is to say, through the female line, via a succession of princesses and morganatic marriages. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this does not make him an heir. It makes him nobody, a grandnephew 7 times removed, a genealogical curiosity possessing no juridical force. Had Vlad Dracula himself learned that a descendant of German counts through the female line was brandishing his inheritance, he would, in all likelihood, have impaled him without further ado. Secondly, concerning the motives. Why, then, this circus with Transylvania? The answer is cynical and multi-layered, like everything this king undertakes. The creation of a personal enclave. Weary of the British Parliament and his perpetually discontented subjects, Charles resolved to establish his own reserve airfield. In the Romanian backwoods, he is no mere constitutional monarch whom any prime minister can pull up short. He is the Prince of Transylvania, a landlord and uncrowned king. This is his personal Marie Antoinette with her toy farm, only in place of porcelain cows, real estate, and political influence. Here, he constructs his ideal world, where his word is law and the locals gaze upon him with the obsequiousness he so lacks in London. And let not his feigned tranquility deceive you. The fear of losing the throne is a hereditary trauma of all those who sit upon the British throne without right. It suffices to recall the fate of the Stuarts, the lawful dynasty whom the Windsors, then still the Hanoverians, cast from the throne in 1714. The Stuarts were not their ancestors. The Windsors descend from German electors placed upon the throne by a parliamentary act. But the fate of the overthrown Stuarts, dying in exile, in poverty, on the charity of foreign courts, haunts every usurper like a nightmare. James II died in France, his son, James III, in Rome, and his grandson, Charles Edward, likewise in Rome, a drunkard forgotten by all. The lawful dynasty was wiped from the face of the earth, its remnants scattered across Europe. And the present occupants of Buckingham Palace know perfectly well that which once befell the Stuarts may yet befall them. The parliament that placed them upon the throne may, with equal ease, cast them down. Therefore, the Transylvanian estate is no mere whim. It is a lifeboat, an attempt to carve out a private sovereign corner, where one may ride out the storm should the British people one day awaken and ask, by what right are these Germans here? A proving ground for ideology. Transylvania is a testing ground for his retrograde ideas of organic living. Here, amidst untouched nature and medieval villages, he can demonstrate in practice that his struggle against globalization and pesticides is no caprice, but the salvation of mankind. He buys up houses not merely for the sake of it, but to embalm this world, to create an enclave where his will shapes reality. This is not philanthropy, it is political technology. A commercial gestjaft. Nor should one forget the banal profit. His funds were buying up real estate in Romania in the 2000s, when prices were a pittance. Now, on the wave of his own PR and the Dracula mania, these assets have multiplied in value. The houses are rented to tourists wishing to touch the mystical inheritance. This is no loss-making caprice, but a successful business, screened by the veil of heritage preservation. The theft of charisma. And this is, perhaps, the most important point. The Windsors are hollow within. They possess neither ancient blood nor sacral legitimacy. Therefore, like thieves at a fair, they snatch at everything that glitters. To be the descendant of a paltry German duke is tedious. To be the heir of Dracula, that is something grand. It confers a dark, mystical allure. It is an attempt to tag along after another's more potent legend, to steal charisma from history and the cinema. It is a heraldic phantom, only in the form of a genealogical anecdote. This entire Transylvanian epic is the perfect metaphor for the modern British monarchy. Lacking its own grandeur, it is forced to rent that of another. Lacking rights, it creates the simulacrum of rights. Lacking a future, it clings to a past that does not belong to it. And when the vampire King Charles III, the descendant of counts and upstarts, proudly declares his kinship with Dracula, one wishes to ask, does he not fear that, one day, true heirs shall appear on his Transylvanian estate, and demand the return of that which was stolen? 12.3. Sweden. The coat of arms of a usurper with a Napoleonic eagle. The Swedish case is perhaps the most candid of all, for the Swedish royal family does not even attempt to conceal its origin. On the contrary, it prides itself upon it. And this renders its coat of arms an ideal illustration of our principal theme. Usurpers who are unashamed of their usurpation. The arms of the House of Bernadotte, the present reigning dynasty of Sweden, contain two elements that bear no relation to Sweden whatever, but which do bear a direct relation to the founder of the dynasty. The first is the Napoleonic eagle. The second is the Bridge of Pontecorvo. Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte, before he became Swedish crown prince, was a Napoleonic marshal. He bore the title of Prince of Pontecorvo, a minuscule Italian principality that Napoleon wrested from the Papal States and granted to his loyal general. The title was purely nominal. Bernadotte never ruled Pontecorvo, never lived there, and, in all likelihood, did not even know what it looked like. Yet the title gave him the status of a sovereign prince. In the Napoleonic system, this carried weight. When, in 1810, the Swedish Riksdag, in a panic, elected Bernadotte as heir to the throne, we have examined the history of this disgrace in detail in Chapter 8. The newly minted crown prince retained the Napoleonic elements in his personal arms. Moreover, when he became King Carl XIV Johann, these elements were incorporated into the arms of the dynasty. And today, 2 centuries later, the official arms of the Swedish royal family include the Shield of Pontecorvo, a golden bridge upon a blue field, above which soars the Napoleonic eagle. The Napoleonic eagle is no Swedish symbol. It is the symbol of an empire that sought to conquer Europe, unleashed endless wars, brought death to millions, and was ultimately annihilated by a coalition of powers that included Sweden itself. And this eagle adorns the arms of the Swedish royal family. A man who bore upon his body the tattoo "Death to Kings" brought to the Swedish throne the arms of the French emperor usurper, and his descendants pride themselves upon it. Swedish monarchists, when this curious fact is pointed out to them, usually shrug their shoulders. Well, that is simply how history unfolded. Yet the point is precisely that it unfolded not as the result of organic development, but as the result of a political bargain of 1810. Bernadotte was not the heir to the Swedish crown by right of blood. He was hired by the Riksdag, and his coat of arms is not the arms of an ancient Swedish dynasty, but the arms of a Napoleonic upstart who successfully married himself into a crown. The Swedish coat of arms is no symbol of national pride. It is a monument to usurpation. And so long as the Napoleonic eagle soars above the Swedish shield, it reminds all, the Bernadottes are strangers here. They came with a sword, with a death to kings tattoo upon their arm, and with a coat of arms granted by a French dictator. And they shall never become their own. 12.4. Belgium, a coat of arms drawn from scratch. If the Spaniards appropriate the arms of others, the British steal those of others, and the Swedes pride themselves upon the arms of a usurper, the Belgians have taken the simplest route of all. They simply invented a coat of arms from scratch, because Belgium never possessed its own heraldic tradition. In 1830, when the Belgians rose up against the United Kingdom of the Netherlands and proclaimed independence, an unpleasant detail emerged. The new state possessed neither a history, nor a dynasty, nor symbols. The Flemings and the Walloons had lived for centuries under the rule of various sovereigns: the Spanish Habsburgs, the Austrian Habsburgs, the French Bourbons, the Dutch House of Orange. No Belgian coat of arms had ever existed. The provisional government created a special commission, which was to devise a state coat of arms. They took as their basis the arms of the Duchy of Brabant, a golden lion upon a black field. Why Brabant? Because Brussels, the capital of the new country, had historically formed part of that duchy. Yet Brabant had never been an independent state. It was a province that had successively formed part of Burgundy, the Spanish Netherlands, the Austrian Netherlands, France, and, finally, the Netherlands. Its coat of arms was the arms of a vassal, not of a sovereign. But there was no choice. They had to take what was at hand. The motto is still more revealing. L'union fait la force. Unity makes strength. It sounds noble and patriotic. Yet there is one problem. This motto was stolen. It had been the motto of the Republic of the Seven United Provinces of the Netherlands, the very state from which Belgium was at that moment seceding. Imagine, you rise up against your oppressor, proclaim independence, create a new state, and take as your state motto the slogan of your former master. The official history of the Belgian coat of arms, published by the Belgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, acknowledges that the arms were devised in 1830 to 1831 by a special commission and not inherited from an ancient dynasty. This is diplomatic language. In reality, it means the coat of arms was thought up by functionaries. They sat down at a table, leafed through books on heraldry, chose the handsomest lion, added a motto that sounded familiar because they had heard it from childhood while living under the Dutch crown, and approved the result. The Belgian coat of arms is no symbol of ancient statehood. It is a product of committee work. It was drawn when it emerged that the new state possessed no history, no symbols, and no right to exist. The Lion of Brabant, the inheritance of a vassal duchy. The motto, a theft from the former suzerain. All of this is the ideal proof that the Belgian monarchy is an artificial construct, possessing no roots in history. And its coat of arms is just as much a fiction as the monarchy itself. 12.5. Norway, a coat of arms resurrected after 500 years. The Norwegian case is perhaps the most touching in its helplessness, for the Norwegians genuinely attempted to restore an ancient symbol. Yet, as with the monarchy itself, the attempt turned into a farce. The Norwegian royal coat of arms, a golden lion with an axe upon a red field, does indeed go back to the 13th century. It is one of the most ancient state coats of arms in Europe. It was used by the Norwegian konungur, struck upon coins, and depicted upon seals. Yet after 1380, when Norway fell beneath the Danish crown, this coat of arms ceased to exist as an independent symbol. Over the course of 5 centuries, half a millennium, it existed only as part of the Danish arms, in the lower corner, almost invisible, eclipsed by Danish lions and Swedish crowns. In 1905, when Norway at last gained independence and hired a Danish prince to be its king, the question arose, which coat of arms to use? Practically no original depictions from the 13th century have survived. Those that did, upon faded parchments, half-worn coins, ruined tombs, provided only an approximate conception. Heralds were compelled to reconstruct the arms from fragmentary data. They looked at the ancient drawings and guessed. Precisely how was the line depicted? Was it rampant or passant? Which way was the head turned? What shape was the axe? What were the details of the crown? As a result, the reconstruction proved inaccurate. The Norwegian National Archive acknowledges that the modern coat of arms is a reconstruction, and not a continuously employed symbol. The final design was approved only in 1937, 32 years after the restoration of independence. And even then, heralds argued. The position of the lion, the shape of the axe, the details of the crown, all of this was settled arbitrarily by majority vote in a commission. As if archaeologists, having unearthed several fragments of an ancient statue, were to mold a new statue from them according to their own taste and declare it an authentic antique masterpiece. The Norwegian coat of arms is no living tradition. It is an archaeological reconstruction, 500 years of oblivion, and then an attempt to resurrect a symbol from fragmentary medieval depictions. A perfect metaphor for the Norwegian monarchy itself, an imported Danish prince, a resurrected medieval coat of arms, an antiquity invented afresh. All of this is a facade, behind which lurks an institution possessing neither juridical nor historical foundations. The lion with the axe is handsome, but it is a replica, just as much a replica as the Norwegian crown. 12.6. Denmark, a coat of arms that was stolen and then redrawn in panic. The Danish case is a case of double heraldic crime. First, the coat of arms was stolen. Then, when the thief realized his crime had been exposed and the house into which he had broken was collapsing, he began frenetically redrawing the stolen goods, attempting to cover his tracks and, simultaneously, to retain what could still be retained. What emerged was not grandeur, but a death certificate. Let us begin with the first crime, the theft. The Danish royal coat of arms is one of the most complex in Europe. It contains a multitude of fields, escutcheons, crowns, and beasts. Yet if one looks closely, a strangeness may be observed. Many of the elements of this coat of arms bear no relation whatever to the present dynasty. The House of Oldenburg, which ruled Denmark from 1448, died out in the male line in 1863 with the death of King Frederick VII. The present House of Glucksburg is a cadet, comital branch of the Oldenburg line, placed upon the throne by the London Protocol of 1852. The Glucksburgs were never sovereign monarchs before the great powers appointed them. Their own coat of arms was modest, a few bars and a lion. Yet, upon ascending the Danish throne, they did not trouble themselves with the creation of new heraldry. They simply appropriated the arms of the extinct Oldenburgs, with all its fields, crowns, and territorial pretensions. Furthermore, the arms they stole contained the symbols of territories lost by Denmark centuries ago, or that had never belonged to it at all. Schleswig, 2 blue lions upon a golden field. Schleswig passed to Prussia in 1864 after the Second Schleswig War. Today, this is part of Germany. Gotland, a lamb with a cross. Gotland never belonged to Denmark. It is a Swedish island. How did it end up in the Danish arms? Through the error of the heralds of the 15th century, who confused Gotland with Gothlandia, a historical region in southern Sweden that Denmark did indeed hold for some time. The Wends, a golden dragon upon a red field. The Wends were Slavic tribes who lived on the southern coast of the Baltic. Denmark never ruled their lands. Yet Danish kings from the 14th century bore the title King of the Wends, purely nominal, for the sake of prestige. And this dragon still adorns the arms to this day, although the Wends vanished as a people centuries ago. The official website of the Danish royal family honestly enumerates all these elements, acknowledging that they are historical and do not reflect modern territorial claims. But permit me, if you lay claim to none of these territories, why do you keep their arms? Why does Swedish Gotland adorn the Danish royal arms? Why German Schleswig? Why the mythical Wends? The answer is simple: to create the illusion of grandeur. The Danish coat of arms is a heraldic corpse. It depicts territories that Denmark does not possess and belongs to a dynasty that died out a century and a half ago. The Glucksburgs, possessing no heraldic tradition of their own, they were merely a comital house from the German backwoods, simply stole the arms of the extinct Oldenburgs. This is no continuity. This is burglary. Now let us turn to the second crime, the panicked redrawing. On the 1st of January, 2025, King Frederick X approved a new royal coat of arms. The official version runs, "This was done to strengthen the unity of the realm and to reflect modern realities." But let us see what truly happened. First, there was removed from the arms an ancient symbol, the 3 crowns. These crowns embodied the Kalmar Union, the union of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden beneath the Danish crown, which existed from 1397 to 1523. For half a millennium, 500 years, The Danish monarchs bore these three crowns upon their arms, symbolically laying claim to dominion over the whole of Scandinavia. And now, in 2025, Frederick X has publicly acknowledged that which his ancestors had refused to acknowledge for centuries. The Kalmar Union is dead. Sweden and Norway are independent states. Denmark no longer lays claim to them, even in the form of a heraldic phantom. This is no updating of the arms. This is a capitulation. The descendant of German counts placed upon the Danish throne by the great powers in 1853 has officially renounced the imperial ambitions of his predecessors. Yet why precisely now? Why not in 1905, when Norway dissolved the Union? Why not in 1523, when the Union had in fact already collapsed? The answer is simple. Up until 2025, the Danish crown could still pretend to lay claim to Scandinavia. Now, with Greenland straining away and the United States threatening annexation, clinging to the phantom three crowns has become positively indecent. They had to be removed. Second, there were added to the arms Greenland and the Faroe Islands. The polar bear of Greenland and the ram of the Faroe Islands occupied distinct fields, displacing ancient symbols. Why? Officially, to strengthen the unity of the realm. In reality, to create the illusion of control where there had never been any, and where now there is none at all. Greenland is ever more loudly demanding independence. The Nalarak Party, advocating rapid separation, is gaining votes. The United States is threatening annexation. And at this moment, the Danish crown clings to the polar bear and the ram as the last symbols of its empire. But symbols shall not replace reality. One may paint a penguin from Antarctica upon the arms. Greenland shall not cease to desire independence for all that. Third, the most astonishing detail, the Glucksbergs, while frantically redrawing the arms, did not dare to remove those very phantom symbols they had stolen from the extinct Oldenburgs. Schleswig, the two blue lions upon a golden field, remained upon the arms, although that territory has been German for a century and a half. Gotland, the Swedish island that entered the arms by a heraldic error of the 15th century, remained. The Wends, the mythical dragon of a vanished people, remained. Why? Because to remove them would be to acknowledge that the entire coat of arms had been a fiction, that the Glucksbergs had for a century and a half dragged upon their shield symbols to which they have neither right nor connection. To acknowledge this is to acknowledge their own theft. And the Danish crown did not have the courage for that. The Danish coat of arms is heraldic panic in action. A dynasty that has no right to the throne, that is losing its territories, feverishly redraws the stolen arms. It removes that which has become utterly impossible to defend, the three crowns, adds that which it is still trying to hold, Greenland and the Faroes, and leaves that which it is afraid to touch, lest it betray its theft, Schleswig, Gotland, the Wends. The result is not a symbol of grandeur, but a death certificate. The death of imperial ambitions, the death of dynastic continuity, the death of the very idea of a Danish monarchy. And so long as this feverishly redrawn, stolen, phantom-filled coat of arms hangs above the gates of the royal palaces, it reminds all, the Glucksbergs are not the masters here. They are thieves who broke into an empty house, passed themselves off as the heirs, and now, as the building collapses, are frantically trying to plaster over the cracks and switch the nameplates, before the roof comes crashing down upon their heads. 12.7. The Netherlands, a coat of arms drawn by the victors. The Dutch coat of arms was approved in 1815 by the Congress of Vienna, that very assembly of the great powers which was redrawing the map of Europe in the wake of Napoleon. And, like everything created at that Congress, it constitutes a political compromise and not an organic symbol of the nation. The arms of the Netherlands are a collage. At the center, a blue shield with a golden lion holding a sword and a bundle of arrows. This is the arms of the Republic of the Seven United Provinces, a state that existed from 1581 to 1795, and that was a republic. The lion with the sword and arrows symbolized the unity of the seven provinces that had risen up against Spanish dominion. It was a symbol that was anti-monarchical in its very essence. Yet in 1815, the great powers decided that the Netherlands must become a monarchy, and they placed upon the throne Willem I of Orange-Nassau, a descendant of the stadtholders who had for centuries sought to usurp power in the republic but had never become kings. Willem brought with him his personal arms, the arms of the House of Orange-Nassau, of German origin, and these arms were superimposed upon the Republican lion. What emerged was something unimaginable. The lion of the Republic, holding a sword and arrows, and upon its breast, an escutcheon bearing the arms of German counts. A republican symbol, seized by a monarchy that is not even royal by origin. The House of Orange-Nassau is neither royal, nor imperial, nor of sovereign princely rank. They are a comital house from the German backwoods, elevated to the throne by the great powers in 1815. And this comital house had the audacity to superimpose its arms upon the lion of the Republic, like a brand upon the body of a vanquished enemy. A revolution pressed into the service of counter-revolution. A republic violated by counts. The motto, Je maintiendrai, I shall maintain, adds the final touch. This is the personal motto of Willem of Orange, the founder of the dynasty. It bears no relation to the state. It is the motto of a family, not of a nation. Yet it adorns the state coat of arms, as though the Netherlands were the private property of the Orange family. The official history of the Dutch arms, published by the Royal Library of the Netherlands, acknowledges that the arms of 1815 were a political compromise. This is diplomatic language. In reality, it means the coat of arms was drawn by the victors. The great powers assembled in Vienna, decided that the Netherlands needed a king, chose Willem of Orange, and instructed the heralds to devise a coat of arms that would satisfy everyone. The heralds took the Republican lion, to placate a people who remembered their glorious past, superimposed upon it the arms of Orange, to gratify the new king, and added the motto, to flatter the dynasty. The Dutch coat of arms is no symbol of national pride. It is a political collage, hastily assembled in 1815. It combines the incompatible, a republican lion and a monarchical crown, the German House of Orange and Dutch statehood. This is the perfect reflection of the Dutch monarchy itself, an artificial construct created by the great powers, possessing no roots in national history. And so long as these arms adorn the buildings of state, they remind the Dutch, your monarchy is not yours. It was devised in Vienna. 12.8. Luxembourg, a coat of arms stolen from an elder brother, and a flag they have been unable to choose for 2 centuries. The Luxembourg case is heraldic absurdity in its purest form. Here, no one even attempted to create an illusion of grandeur. Here, they simply seized whatever came to hand, repainted it, and passed it off as their own. Let us begin with the coat of arms, that which today adorns the state institutions of the Grand Duchy. A red lion with a forked tail against a background of blue and silver bars is held out as the ancient symbol of the House of Luxembourg. Yet if one delves a little deeper, a devastating truth emerges. This is not the Luxembourg arms at all. It is the arms of the Duchy of Limburg, which Count Henry V of Luxembourg simply borrowed from his elder brother, the Duke of Limburg, in the 13th century, adding the bars merely in order to differ somewhat. That is to say, the foundation of the national symbol is another's coat of arms, slightly retouched in the course of a family squabble. No conquest, no inheritance, no imperial grant. Simply, brother, let me wear your lion. I'll add a few little stripes. Nobody will notice. A second blow to Luxembourg's statehood is delivered by the current arms of Grand Duke Henri, approved in 2001. At the very center of the shield, in the so-called escutcheon of pretense, there gleams the arms of the House of Bourbon-Parma, blue fleurs-de-lis upon a golden field with a red bowyer. Formally, this is no violation. The Grand Duke is married to Maria Theresa of Bourbon-Parma, and since she constitutes the heraldic heiress of her father, her arms have the right to occupy a place upon his shield. Such is an ancient feudal tradition, rooted in the age when marriage was a transaction for the amalgamation of lands and titles. Yet it is precisely in this that the exposure lies. The Luxembourg coat of arms is not a state symbol. It is a family crest, a showcase for the display of dynastic connections. The arms of a sovereign state were altered to reflect not the will of the people, not a shift in borders, but the matrimonial union of its ruler. This is not the arms of a country. It is the arms of the family that owns that country. And it demonstrates with crystalline clarity what Luxembourg truly is, a private estate, transmitted by inheritance, and not a state in the modern sense of that word. But the most devastating detail is the flag. 3 horizontal stripes, red, white, and light blue. Sound familiar? Indeed, it is practically an exact copy of the flag of the Netherlands. The sole difference is the shade of blue. The Dutch have a dark blue, the Luxembourgers a light blue, Pantone 299C. Yet at a distance, in windy weather or poor light, they are impossible to tell apart. In 1992, the Luxembourg government was compelled to amend the law specially, fixing a specific shade of blue in order to differ at least somewhat from their former suzerain. And debates still rage in Parliament over a complete replacement of the national flag with the red lion, the ancient ancestral banner of the House of Luxembourg. 90% of the population favor this change, but the bureaucrats resist. Consider this. A state that has existed since 1815 is still unable to decide upon its own flag. For 2 centuries, they have waved a strip of cloth that is indistinguishable from the flag of a neighboring country. And when they are offered a chance to replace it with an authentic historical symbol supported by the overwhelming majority of the people, the government digs in its heels. Why? Because to recognize the red lion as the state flag would be to recognize that, for all the previous 200 years, they have been waving someone else's flag. That their national symbol was an error. That even in this they failed to demonstrate any independence. The Luxembourg coat of arms and flag are the perfect metaphor for the state itself. The arms were stolen from an elder brother and are draped with the arms of wives. The flag was copied from a former master and is retained only out of fear of admitting the mistake. All of this, these are not symbols of sovereignty. These are symbols of an incapacity for sovereignty. 12.9. Monaco, a coat of arms with disguised murderers. If you thought that nothing could be worse than the Luxembourg arms, you were deeply mistaken. Welcome to Monaco, a principality whose state coat of arms proudly depicts the criminal offense with which the dynasty began. Look upon the arms of Monaco. 2 armed monks with raised swords support a shield of lozenge pattern. Above the shield, a princely crown. Below the shield, the motto Deo Juvant, with God's help. An innocent observer might think the monks symbolize piety and faith, and the swords a readiness to defend the fatherland. The innocent observer would be profoundly mistaken. On the night of the 8th of January, 1297, François Grimaldi, nicknamed Malizia, the Cunning, approached the gates of the fortress of Monaco with a band of armed men. He was disguised as a Franciscan monk. He knocked at the gates and asked for shelter. The night was cold, a monk was freezing. Let him in to spend the night. The unsuspecting guards, seeing an unarmed cleric, opened the gates. And in that same instant, François the Cunning drew a sword hidden beneath his habit, slew the guards, and admitted his men, who slaughtered the garrison and seized the fortress. This is no founding of a dynasty by right of conquest. This is not even an honest storming. This is brigandage, perpetrated under the guise of a cleric. Sacrilege twice over. First, the donning of a habit to deceive, then, the sword to kill. In this moment, this act of treachery and deceit, the Grimaldis have made their state coat of arms. The 2 monks with swords are no allegory. They are portraits of François the Cunning and his accomplices, immortalized in heraldry as a symbol of the fact that their power began with disguise, lies, and butchery. The motto, with God's help, adds the final, already utterly grotesque, touch. God, in the Grimaldis' view, helped François the Cunning don a habit, deceive the guards, draw his sword, and slaughter the unarmed. Sacral legitimacy in its purest, most unclouded form. We seized this rock by deceit and murder, and God was on our side. It is precisely thus, no more and no less, that the motto of the Principality of Monaco should be read. Yet this is not all. The lozenge pattern upon the shield, fusili argent and gules, is no ancient symbol of sovereignty. It is the inheritance of Grimaldo Canella, a Genoese consul of the 12th century, who was the first to employ this pattern as the emblem of a wealthy merchant family. The Grimaldis were not monarchs, not princes, not conquerors. They were traders and bankers. They purchased themselves a patent of nobility, then lands, then titles, and then, when the opportunity presented itself, seized a rock, disguised as monks. Their coat of arms is the arms of bankers pretending to be monarchs. The lozenges upon the shield are no symbol of power, but the emblem of a trading house that successfully diversified its business into brigandage. The Monégasque coat of arms is no state symbol. It is a confession to a crime, perpetuated in gold and silver. And so long as 2 monks with swords stand guard over the princely crown, they remind all, the Grimaldis are not here by right. They are here because, one night in 1297, one of them put on a habit and lied. 12.10. Liechtenstein, a coat of arms, a collection of extinct houses and lost territories. The Liechtenstein coat of arms is perhaps the most brazen example of a heraldic dumping ground. If the Spaniards at least lay claim to the territories whose arms they bear, the Liechtensteins do not even trouble themselves with claims. They simply collect the arms of extinct houses and defunct states with which their ancestors were once linked by marriage and display them upon their shield, much as a nouveau riche displays in his drawing room a collection of antiques purchased at auction. Let us examine this coat of arms by quarters, and you shall understand everything yourselves. First quarter, a black eagle upon a golden field. This is the arms of Silesia. Silesia is today in Poland. The Liechtensteins never ruled it, never laid claim to it, and have no connection whatever to it, save that one of their ancestors once married an heiress of the House of Quinring, and the Quinrings once held certain lands in Silesia. The chain is so long and so thin that it snaps at the slightest touch. Yet the eagle remains, because it looks handsome. Second quarter, 8 bars of gold and black with a green band. This is the arms of the House of Quinring. The Quinrings died out in 1594, 430 years extinct. Yet the Liechtensteins, who became linked to them by marriage a century before their extinction, continue to drag these arms upon their shield. Why? And why not? There is space. The arms are handsome. Let them hang. Third quarter, a shield parted per pale, red and white. This is the arms of the Duchy of Troppau. Troppau is the modern Czech Opava. The Liechtensteins possessed this duchy in the 17th and 18th centuries, but lost it. Today it is the territory of the Czech Republic, and Liechtenstein has no connection whatever to it. Yet the arms remain, a memory of former grandeur that never was. Fourth quarter, a black harpy upon a golden field. This is the arms of the House of Cirksena, representing the county of Rietberg. Rietberg is in Germany. The Cirksenas are extinct. The Liechtensteins inherited their arms through marriage. And they, too, gleam upon the shield. In the base of the shield, a golden hunting horn upon a blue field. This is the arms of the Duchy of Jagerndorf. Jagerndorf is the modern Czech Krnov. Yet another lost territory, yet another phantom arms. And only at the very center, in the escutcheon, is placed the family arms of the Liechtensteins, party per pale, or in gules. This is the single authentic element in the whole of this heraldic dumping ground. All the rest is a collection of trophies, gathered over centuries of dynastic marriages with expiring houses and fading states. But the most outrageous detail is not even this. The most outrageous detail is the juridical status of these arms. The Liechtenstein coat of arms is not a state symbol in the ordinary sense. It is the arms of the princely house, and the right to use it is held only by members of the princely family and the state bodies to whom the family has granted this right. Private persons wishing to use the arms must obtain a special permit from the government, that is to say, ultimately, from that same princely family. A state symbol that is the private property of the reigning dynasty. It is not the state that owns the arms, but the family that owns the arms and graciously permits the state to use them. This is the perfect metaphor for what Liechtenstein represents. Not a state with a monarchy, but a family corporation with a flag. The princely house of Liechtenstein purchased this territory in 1699 to 1712, received sovereignty from Napoleon in 1806, and has since governed it as a private estate. The coat of arms that they display as a state symbol is, in truth, their family arms, draped with the arms of extinct relatives and lost possessions. This is no symbol of a nation. It is a showcase of family antiquities. And so long as these arms adorn state institutions, they remind all, Liechtenstein is not a country. It is an estate, and its inhabitants are not citizens. They are tenants. 12.11. Conclusion: Heraldic falsehood as a system. We have examined 10 European monarchies, from Spain to Liechtenstein, from Britain to Monaco, and in each of them, the coat of arms has proved to be either stolen or rewritten retroactively, or brought by a usurper, or invented from scratch, or resurrected after 500 years of oblivion, or a political collage, or a collection of extinct houses, or a portrait of criminals and habits. Not a single authentic, continuous, juridically irreproachable heraldic tradition. Not a single coat of arms that honestly reflects the origin of the dynasty and its right to the throne. Everywhere, forgeries, thefts, compromises, errors, and outright counterfeits. This is no coincidence. It is a system. Monarchies that have no right to the throne cannot possess honest coats of arms either. Their symbolism is just as false a facade as their legitimacy. And when the crowns fall, the coats of arms shall fall too. And the historians of the future shall study them as curious examples of how usurpers attempted to assume the appearance of legitimacy with the aid of stolen and fabricated pictures. Heraldry does not lie. It merely lays bare the lie of those who employ it. And the lie of the European monarchies, captured in gold and azure, is now visible to all who have eyes to see.